and welcome to the EUDI Talk podcast. My name is Tony Bitzionis, and I am here with my good friend and pal and co-host Alex Perala. Alex, hello.
Hello, Tony.
And today we are joined by Mr. Leif Johansson, Director of Technology for the Siros Foundation. Leif, thank you so much for joining us. Please get us started by just giving us a general background of yourself and your experience and what you do for the Siros Foundation.
Thanks for having me on your show. So my background is been working in research and education infrastructure for a very long time. And before that, I played with the idea of being a mathematician for a while. So I have a background in academia. And for the last, like 20 years, I've been building infrastructure, mostly trust and identity infrastructure for academia, for large-scale infrastructure, targeting research infrastructures, etc. So what I do for a living mostly involves building enabling trust between research projects, really. And so some of the stuff that I've been involved in building is used to connect large-scale international research efforts, like the stuff that is used to pry at nature, right, to figure out what nature looks like. That has taken me on various detours. One of those detours is like a detour into standardization. I've been active in the IETF for many, many years. I have been active in various efforts related to identity assurance. So I've been volunteering for something called the Kantara Initiative for many years. I'm one of those people you can't really Google because my name coincides with,
Right.
it's very common, right? So if you Google me, you might think that I'm the chairman of the board of AstraZeneca, and I'm not.
That was going to be my next question.
We were really just hoping to get some cheap drugs, but
Yeah. Sorry, I can't help you there.
the other thing that we were really interested in was well, actually, I'm interested in a bunch of stuff that you're involved in. But the way we got in touch was through a colleague of yours who emailed us about your involvement in the German EUDI competition, the wallet competition. So
Right.
I think you were specifically involved with I've been reading it, so I don't know how to say it. WW Wallet.
Right. And we have a T-shirt that outlines all of the various pronunciations, and there are many.
Okay.
You can call it Dab Wallet, you can call it Yao Yao Wallet, you can call it WW Wallet, or you can just call it the Siros Wallet. This this thing is kind of it's got a very short and hectic history. About 2 years ago, actually, like it got started, and it got started by me, me and John Bradley. So John Bradley, for people who are in the identity standards community, you're gonna most likely you're gonna run into his name sooner or later because he's been on like a lot of the core standards work in the identity field. He's a core standards author of OpenID, for instance. He's worked on multiple of the US federal government standards for identity too. And me and John had a conversation a couple of years ago, and basically along the lines of, hey, wouldn't it be cool if you could build a wallet out of passkeys? Like John works for Yubico, like the guys who build the YubiKey security keys. And I've known the founder at Yubico for a long time, like Stina Ehrensvärd. We go back about 20 years. And so I gave her a call and said, well, this thing with wallets it's going to happen in Europe, right? There's going to be a big political push. And we should really do something to make sure that passkeys are like a major part of the wallet ecosystem globally, because passkeys have really been successful as an identity tool, right? They have like most, I think the most effective countermeasure to phishing we've been able to deploy globally. And the fact that all major tech platforms support it, the fact that you have a fairly healthy ecosystem of independent manufacturers like Yubico and others who build like independent implementations of the same standard, all certify against the same set of criteria, all interoperating, and Apple, Google, Microsoft all of the big tech supports it. That's a major achievement, right? And now this wallet thing is coming along. It'd be a shame if all of the work we did for passkeys goes like is just wasted.
Mhm.
So why don't we figure out a way to make passkeys work for wallets? And we started iterating on that. And that's how we started the Dab Wallet project. There's a lot more to the story than that, and I can tell you about it. But that's really the reason, right? It was a thought experiment, basically to figure out, can we build an identity wallet in JavaScript
Mhm.
with passkeys as the security device? Turns out the answer is yes, you can. Yeah.
And
And
so
that's how we got started.
how did that's great, and like that's very interesting. And also at our media organization, we've been tracking the rise of passkeys, and it's
Yeah.
been like really rapid. Like I'm
Yeah.
kind of looking back after hearing you say that, I'm like, it has actually been just like a few years,
Yeah.
and they've really proliferated. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
It's impressive. Um, but
And it's not even, I mean, it's not by chance, right? This is, if you were to identify like one person who's been instrumental in that, it would be actually Stina and her husband Jacob, who were the couple who founded Yubico, right? They have been like, this has been their personal project, and they've been very successful. I mean, it's a fairly small company, Yubico, right? But it still had like this monumental effect on like what the tech giants do.
Mhm.
And I think it's actually helped to have an actor in there who wasn't who could collaborate with all of them, right? Without looking like a threat. So it really is down to them.
Yeah. Um, but back to I have been reading it as Wawa Wallet, which I know
Yeah,
is not right.
wallet, Wawa wallet, that's fine. Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna keep saying that. But the I want to just do a little more table setting for our listeners who won't necessarily know what's going on in Europe. We have a lot of listeners here in North America.
Yep.
Um, so I think probably most of our listeners are aware of the EUDI wallet, the big digital wallet project. But what was this competition in Germany? Like, was it organized by the German
Right.
government? Can you tell us about that?
It was actually organized by something called Sprind, and I can't tell you what it stands for, but it's an acronym. It is basically an innovation funder in Germany.
Mm,
And they get involved with stuff like life science innovation funding, and it's kind of like a public VC, right? They throw money at the problem and go, like, compete for this, right? Here's a problem. Give us a few solutions and we'll fund like half of them, and then we'll fund half of those, right? And those kinds of iterative competitions are like really good for making rapid progress on a problem. They launched something called it's called a Funke, right? That kind of means competitive process. And they launched one for identity wallets, for EUDI wallets. Now, like, yes, there is a big political driven effort in Europe to build the EUDI wallet. And it isn't like, for the benefit of our like listeners from who aren't in Europe, this isn't like one wallet, right? The idea is to have one in each member state and have them all interoperate. So it's not one wallet, it's at least 30
mhm,
interoperating, like common protocols, common standards, common behavior, common governance. This is a major undertaking.
mhm,
And like the way the EU does these things is sometimes a little bit too top down. And the Germans decided, now let's try to make this like innovative. Let's do an agile, iterative process. And they managed to convince the German government to spend some innovation money on it. And the Funke competition got started with like two tracks. There's a funded track and an unfunded track. And we had been doing with DubDub Wallet for a while and basically found out about this like fairly late in the process. And we just said, well, hey, we'll raise our hands for like the unfunded track. We don't care. We don't need the money, but and at that point we're just basically a network of university people and Stina from Ubico
mm,
and some additional resources from Ubico who kind of started helping out. Yubico started like putting a lot more resources into this, right? And then we started to grow into a real project. And as we iterated, like this competition happened in phases, right? So you like the first phase, you presented like a first cut of a solution, and they selected half. It's like Survivor, right? They half like went out the door, and then there's a next iteration, and then we had to do a little bit more, right? And the third iteration, and we surprised ourselves by successfully surviving the first round and the second round. And in the second round, we actually beat out both the Google and Samsung competition.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. And in the third round, basically wasn't it was a non-compete round. So at the end of this, there were two funded wallets and two non-funded wallets that were like we were given that little prize, you know. So we're four winners, yeah. And so we thought it was like it was one of the best experiences we've ever had as a project, because you really got to push yourself against real and really well thought out requirements. So the project it's kind of down, our success is really down to not the fact that we like succeeded, but the fact that they gave us all of this push.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it was a great experience.
So what happens from there? Because there were the four winners. Is
Mhm.
it like ultimately one of them might be selected to actually provide the country's wallet?
No, I think that what's going to happen in most countries in Europe is that the governments are going to provide like an in-house, like initial first cut wallet that will basically only do mobile driver's licenses, maybe
Mm.
something like that, right? And then a lot of countries are going to open up for independent market or private sector to provide additional wallets. And I think that everybody expects that that's where the good things are going to happen. Like when innovation comes into this and we are able to compete on features, behavior, usability, etc., etc.
Mhm.
So DubDub Wallet's ambition is to be certified as in as many places as we can, right? And you know, it is moving at different speeds in different parts of Europe, and not only in Europe, outside of Europe as well. There's a lot of countries who are looking at this kind of identity model, and so we hope to become like do for identity what Let's Encrypt did for certificates, right? Basically, provide a very easy to use technical substrate for anybody who wants to build a wallet.
Mhm.
Really interesting. And that's, I mean, I was going to ask about something similar to that a second ago, because we read and write a lot about, especially these days, different wallet rollouts, or not rollouts, like planning phases and projects and all
Mm.
these ambitious, interesting sounding goals, especially from our perspective in North America. Most of it is happening over there in Europe. Like, I just was curious, do you have a take on what a successful rollout does look like? Because we're getting to the point now where we're going to start seeing rollouts, and it's going to be sort of for us foreign territory.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. And I think you have to. The problem with wallets is that there is a reason they haven't happened before, right? And that's that they're fairly expensive, right? That this is expensive infrastructure, and it's super expensive from the point of view of usability. We don't know really how to talk to users about this. And in order to find out, we need to kind of get it out there and get data and get like a feedback cycle set up. All of that is kind of costly, right? And you need to amortize that cost over more than one use case in order to make this work. So um, I think a successful rollout involves, first of all, a good inventory of all of the relevant use cases. And that means talking to a lot of verticals, a lot of businesses, a lot of enterprises in a lot of countries, and getting them to a point where they feel comfortable sort of relying on some common infrastructure. And that infrastructure can be used to kind of feed this feedback loop of cycle of improvement, getting that going, right? That's going to be really, really important. So I don't think that we can deal with wallets as a national project
Mm,
or as a regional project. It has to involve a certain amount of global collaboration.
mm,
Um, Otherwise, we're going to confuse the hell out of our users,
yeah,
um, and we're going to fail.
yeah.
Mhm.
And so, do you think that would be like a lesson to be learned for the eventual deployment in like a North American area.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing I would say is that uh, you cannot really underestimate the number of edge cases that like exist in identity space. I think a lot of people think about wallets as like, do they replace current IDPs and SPs and federation? They really don't, right? They enable new use cases. And a lot of those use cases look like edge use cases to traditional IAM. So for instance, one of the big use cases we've been looking at is enterprise on employee onboarding, right? How do you get from being not employed somewhere to being employed somewhere, and like the whole job application process, showing your credentials? Do you actually know how to? Do you have a license to weld, or do X, Y, and Z that is needed for the production line that you want to work at? All of those things are they're just chock full of edge cases, right? If you look at e-health, like every case is an edge case. Like things like representation, it's not enough for you to be able to show your prescriptions to the pharmacy. You have to be able to deal with your mother, who's a
Right.
little bit old, right?
Mhm.
It's all edge cases. So one of the things we kind of have been pushing from Siros Foundation and together with Yuvico is that it's not enough to just model your use case on the 80-20 principle. If you look at that, right, you just look at, well, 80% of people have phones. We just do phones, right? It's never going to work because you have to cover 100% of people.
Mm.
Otherwise, you're never going to succeed in practical deployment. And people tend to ignore the edge case, the 20%, because they're hard.
Mm.
And as engineers, we're trained to go look at like the 80-20 case and just look at like figure out what we do next. Like the 20% we can do next, right? No, you can't.
Mm.
So that I think is the ignoring the 80-20 principle, I think is one of my biggest sort of like, yeah, you should do that.
It's a it's an ambitious aim, and in principle it's good, but I'm also curious about the economics of it.
How do you do it, right? Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, like
Well,
who's paying for all this?
yeah, and I think that's kind of that's the key, right? And one of the this is why like we're going back to web and passkeys, right? Our basic principles for like trying to do wallets good is build it on web technology. Don't try to build it on costly native app. Of course, we're going to do native apps, but you have to enable every kind of deployment there is, and you have to be able to do like UX iteration very fast, and that means building this on web technology. So build it on web technology. Two, build it on a security, basic security functions that exist today in the market. That means passkeys. So web and passkeys are the two success factors to keeping the cost low.
Hmm.
Like when we talk about this, we think about like four pillars. You got to make things secure, privacy preserving, usable, and cost efficient. You balance those four things, then you got a success in security, in IT security, right?
Hmm.
And that's exactly where passkey and web comes in.
Uh, on that note, on like back to passkeys, I guess I am curious about the competition in Germany that where you were one of the top four. How I'm not really sure who was judging it or what the criteria were, but like,
Mhm.
do you think that you were selected as one of the winners specifically because you had such a good approach to authentication, or was that sort of one of multiple factors? Like, what were the dynamics that people were
I mean,
looking?
you don't know. I think there are many things. One of them is the open source aspect, certainly, right? The fact that we're independent, we're not sort of dependent on big tech, even though we use big tech when we can.
Mm.
The fact that that the usability is actually pretty good. And the fact that you can, as an individual, you can actually control how much you value your information. Like that, it's like when we build identity systems, it's very often the case that the relying party or the IDP is kind of deciding where the value is, right? This is important. We decide that you're going to use multi-factor authentication here or there, But in reality, individuals want to have a little bit of control over this, right? For
Mhm.
some people, their library card is more important than their, loyalty card to the pet store. It's
Mhm.
not up to the pet store or the library to decide which is more important. And by introducing like the passkey system actually gives you that thing that you can decide, hey, for this thing, I'm going to actually use a security key because I value it more importantly than that thing over there.
Mhm.
That individual control is extremely important in order to get all of those edge cases. And it is a fairly efficient cost control measure as well.
Mhm.
Google did a study back in 2012 when they started to introduce passkeys, when they actually came up with it together with Ubico, right? Where they discovered that like in order just by giving people, the whole, I don't know if you're aware of this whole fishbowl experiment that they ran. They basically put fishbowls out with like YubiKeys, like pick one and just enable it in your Google account. That's what Google did initially, right? I think they still do. They reduced the cost of their of identity theft for the company internally by like orders of magnitude. They
Mhm.
basically eliminated all successful phishing attempts by
Mhm.
just letting people take control over their own identity and security. And if you can do that for the world, then we can get to a point where we can eliminate all of that. Was it $10 trillion worth of organized crime and IT crime, cybercrime?
Sounds right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Also, I wanted to ask, I guess, I mean, like the question under my question a moment ago is I'm always kind of like trying to figure out how much policymakers and government people understand this to be an issue, the identity issue. Because we talk to so many people in this industry who take it as a given, like this is super important. This is the most
yeah.
important security thing. But then in real life, you need other people to understand that, and especially people who are like running the show. So
Policymakers in Europe do. I can
yeah.
tell you that. Oh, fan. Absolute. This is like a front and center thing, right? And it's all around this sovereignty thing. But um, I think over time, we kind of have to get to a point where the policy and big tech can shake hands over stuff like this because we can't be in like a permanent turf war over who controls identity.
Hmm.
Right now, the EU is pushing let's the EU control identity, right? And big tech is pushing back, right? But we have to kind of find a little bit a middle ground where people can have a little bit of their own control over identity and not just cede it to either governments or big tech.
Yeah. I
But
also
they
want
do understand the issue,
Mhm.
absolutely.
that,
In my experience.
yeah, that's good to hear. And I mean, it makes sense based on what we've been reporting, like seeing
Yeah,
the level of organization for this EUDI project.
yeah,
It makes sense. Um, I also wanted to ask about sort of the bigger ecosystem in Sweden, because you are with Siros, the Siros Foundation, which
right.
honestly I'm not really sure. I hadn't really heard of it before. And then also I think you're
Yeah,
affiliated with Sunet, which I
yeah.
believe is like I had trouble. I was Googling it earlier, and I was like, it's hard to kind of. It's a university network, like IT network. Is that
It's
right?
kind of like internet too, right?
Hmm.
So most countries have this like organization that is responsible for delivering e-services and infrastructure to to academia. In the US, it's called Internet 2. In Canada, it's called Canary, etc., etc. Right? In Sweden, it's called Sunet, and all of those organizations collaborate because in research, it's such an international endeavor. Like we have research projects, they will involve people from every country in the world, not just Europe and US, right? Which means that when we see a technology shift like wallets come along, we have to deal with it on an international basis from day one.
Hmm.
Most governments can have the luxury of just dealing with their own citizenry. We can't. So that's kind of why it's been a fairly effective collaboration because we collaborate all the time on everything. Um, So Sunit is that, and Siros Foundation is you haven't heard of it. That's not strange because we're super new, right? I mean,
Mm.
we're a few months old, and we were set up by Stina Ehrensvärd, the EUDI co-founder, with like personal endowments because she wanted to ensure that the whole like passkey and web and wallet story actually works, right? That we can have a chance to make Dub Wallet and all of that infrastructure that goes along with it work.
Mm.
That's good for the passkey ecosystem. It's good for the world, and it's good for the web.
Uh, Go ahead, Tony.
uh, I just curious, if there are any like builders listening now, is there is there like an assumption about digital wallets that comes to mind that you wish the tech community would just kind of challenge more often? Is there like something that has changed or
Yeah,
that is changing or that you have through your experience have seen?
that
Is
it has
anything?
anything to do with cryptocurrencies and
Yeah,
and
exactly.
and blockchain.
Yeah,
It used to. I mean, not too long ago, if you were to look at any identity startup, they would all be doing like their own blockchain thing. And the
Mm.
problem with that is that everybody assumed that their particular startup was going to be the center of the universe because everybody needs to connect to that particular thing, right? That vertical, that instance of Ethereum, whatever it was, right?
Mhm.
And the world doesn't build single hierarchies anymore. Tech certainly doesn't. The internet has never done that. Well, it did in the 70s, but no longer, right?
Mhm.
Everything we build in tech is decentralized, truly decentralized. And most people who talked about decentralized identity back then, they talked about decentralized in the sense that everybody centralizes to me.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that thing that, in fact, if I could stop people talking about wallets at all, just talk about credential managers, it would help. But, because wallets make people think this is about fungibility, right?
Right.
And it isn't. Identity isn't fungible.
Mhm.
It
Yeah.
shouldn't be anyway. I shouldn't sell my identity to anybody. You
Yeah.
shouldn't, right?
That's a good point. I mean, I know that
Yeah.
in like layman's sense, anytime a digital wallet is mentioned,
Yeah.
that is for me at least not as much anymore because of the industry that I'm in every day, but you think about the as you put it before,
Right.
like every company was coming out with their own cryptocurrency or something,
Mm.
and you know,
Yeah.
I'm very relieved that we don't have to think about that all the time now.
I mean, today, if you look at the standards community, there are very few people who look at like there are some people who still play around with blockchain for some aspects of trust management, but it certainly isn't like this front and center aspect of what we talk about now is the three-party model for the identity, where you have an issuer and a holder and a verifier. And it's much, much more open, and people sort of work on it in a much more serious way, I think, today than they used to. And you could see like industry conferences like IW, they used to be just like chock full of blockchain startup and no more, right? It's like back to serious business. Um, so yeah, that's the thing. The other thing that I would advise devs to do, and it's kind of a general thing, is never use yourself as a test case, because
Okay.
like devs, like people like us, we're permanently damaged by exposure to technology. We can never recover from that, right? And we can never see the world, our applications as regular users do. It's
Right.
simply not possible, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a
You're
great
it's like a fish in water. Uh,
Yeah, exactly, right.
yeah.
So like do data-driven research.
yeah.
Yeah, we could do like a whole podcast on just sort of learnings about like things that would surprise you about user behavior when it comes to identity. But
Mm.
Maybe we should. Uh,
Yeah,
but
definitely.
yeah, that's a great note to end on, a teaser for the sequel to this conversation. I am disappointed that your dog Newton hasn't shown
he
up to
hasn't attacked
talk.
us. No, he's
Yeah.
Uh,
asleep somewhere.
yeah, we were you warned us before we started recording that he might show up, but I understand you get
No.
tired and you need a nap, so I'm
Yeah,
I'm
We
I'm
always do.
starting to
that's
feel
probably
good.
it.
Yeah. But this has been a great conversation. We love having these like high level talks about the bigger picture, and always interested to see what's going on in Europe as well with the EUDI. So thank you
Yep.
very much for talking to us about this, and you're very articulate about it. So it's a great way to learn.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, sir.
It's
All
nice
right.
talking.